And so, hello Duane, and hello everybody on board. And I shall start by passing the mic over to Peter.
Hello everybody. Can't believe it's a week since we did this last. I'm sorry, my throat's a bit bad today. So I'm going to be even more impossible to understand, I'm afraid. I wanted to just start with a bit of an apology, because I gather that people are having difficulty in understanding us, or me probably in particular. So I'll try and speak more slowly. It's an interesting thing about the different dialects and differences in our language, I suppose, really, from different parts of the world. A while back, I was very interested to learn that when the first talkie films came into this country from America in the early 30s or late 20s, whenever it was, people just simply never heard Americans speak before in this country, and they couldn't understand them. And it wasn't only the accents, it was also the strange new words that we'd never heard, or different uses of existing words, such as dumb for stupid and smart meaning somebody clever, and all these things. But I think because of the cinema and the TV programs that we obviously get over here from America, it's been quite useful, and then we've sort of gone back more to understanding each other. Because now a number of the words that were so strange and new in those days are now in common usage here, and I dare say it cuts the other way as well. Anyway, that's by the way. Just really, my first point about dreams. Excuse me. The only interesting one, or seemingly interesting one, that I've had since last time, and it was, as usual, quite a brief one. I seem to be in this big building in an area sort of outside of the what appear to be office doors, and aware vaguely of a stairwell to the left. And somebody was with me. Couldn't see who they were, but they're sort of standing next to me and said, "Whatever you do, don't open that door over there. Make sure it's kept closed." And I said, "Well, why is that then?" He says, "There's these weird creatures behind it, and if they get out, we'll have a lot of problems." And as he said that, the door suddenly opened and revealed these truly weird white-coloured monstrosities. I don't know quite what they were really. And we both rushed over and slammed the door closed. But that was the end of it. So I don't know what's really to make of that. But I'm more interested actually in going back to a dream that I have mentioned on one of Kevin's earlier Skypes before we were doing this joint thing with you. So people may have already heard it, but at the risk of being repetitive, it's one I would really like Duane's take on what he thinks it actually means, because it's one that's intrigued me for a long while, and it concerned my old dad, where we were outside a cafe in this dream, tables and chairs and stuff, and suddenly we stood up, and my old dad did something to me that he'd never ever done in life, and that was he threw his arms around me and hugged me, and he said something to the effect of, "If you can stop the fighting, you deserve to come home." I have no idea what that meant to this day, and we suddenly shot up into the sky like a rocket, and that was the end of it. But it's intrigued me for many years, this dream. My old dad, in life, he was a real, what you call a man's man. He would never hug anybody, another man. He was quite disgusted when he saw men hugging on the TV and said men don't hug and all this sort of thing. And when he was in the Royal Tank Corps in the war, and used to follow the tanks into battle to repair them when they used to break down, and so on and so on. And it was totally out of character for him to hug another man, even me, his son. So I just wonder what that was all about.
Yes, hello, Peter. Yes, what I was saying is, the weeks go fast. Here it is, another week. Time and space we're in now is speeded up, you might say, because people are rushing forward. And I appreciate the history there of, the silent movies to the talkies. I'm sure it was a little bit of a surprise, and here we are, and every day something's new, etc. And so, first off, listening to your experience in the building, okay, and the stairway to the left. All right, so something to the left, for the most part, is past. In other words, something that you know. And so now you know about this. It's not on the right anymore. It's not in your future with what we're doing. So that leads up, and you're more like on the first floor of the basement or wherever you are. You know what the experience is. And yes, at ground level, you know, you see what's happening. You're on the earth. This is ground level right here. So you have the choice to open the door, whatever. And again, there's an old saying, curiosity killed the cat. But of course, we're on an adventure too, so you can deal with it. But in that experience, you were on a little adventure. You closed the door because you saw what was behind it. You didn't want to go any further anyhow. So that's the basic idea of that. In other words, it's kind of like one way to look at it is that you decide to let in to your world what you want to. And also the stairway is at the left. You decide to climb the stairway above that level, you see, getting beyond that level. So it's things are just being demonstrated to you. You are the decider. Now the next one is kind of fun with your dad. It could be your dad, or it could be one of the real guides. And so when he's hugging you, etc., and like you're saying, your dad never did that. Okay, there's a couple sides to that. All of a sudden, he's on the real side. He can be seen more and what he's went through, because of seeing people and experience them like that. All of a sudden, they're on the real side, and it's like, oh my gosh, you know, why didn't I do this or that? Or, you know, they see a lot more, but some people don't. It just depends upon how wrapped up they are in themselves. And so the part about the fighting is, and so it's not necessarily fighting. The real side experience, the dream experience that we call, it is an actual experience. But it's all part of a wake up, of a bigger wake up that we have to get to eventually recognize, and that is that it's not necessarily fighting so much, but what is fighting? Fighting is confusion, isn't it? Yes. So in other words, sorting out things so that you know, when you hugged and then you guys took off. In other words, the idea that's demonstrated to you is that when you sort things out, you will soar. Okay, so there's one way to look at it. Okay.
Oh, right. Okay, that's very interesting. Thank you. Excuse me. Just a few other questions I'd like to ask you. Some years ago, I was advised to go and visit a clairvoyant lady, a German lady. She was, in fact, she had a British name because she was married to an Englishman. But I was given, she was on best advice, that she was really good, but it wasn't a fraud or anything. So I went along out of curiosity some 6 months later. She had no idea who I was. I just rang her and gave my first name and went along, and she was quite remarkable. But one of the things she said I found it fascinating, one of the many things she said that was fascinating, was that when we pass over, we're always made to see our own funerals, because a lot of people don't realise they're dead. And I found this very interesting. And the older I get, I'm afraid the more funerals I seem to be going to, the more and more people are popping off. But every time I go to one now, I'm sort of always aware of looking around to see if I get any clues at all, if the deceased is about, and giving any clues. This has never happened until a couple of years ago, when my boyhood friend suddenly died, and I went along to his funeral, and I was just something made me look up at the ceiling, and when I looked up at the ceiling, the lights were sort of like big clusters of enormous sort of bulbs, and one of them suddenly, as I looked at it, suddenly flashed on off, and it was the only one that did that. I saw the other lights on the ceiling, and it was just like it was winking at me. And I always remember this guy, because when we were kids, that was one of his trademarks. He had this knowing wink, and I couldn't help smiling. I thought, you are there, and I just wondered if it's all true. I mean, are we all made to see their funerals?
Well, okay. You know, it's interesting when we use the idea, we'll go over these things that you've brought up, and that is just what you've summed it up with is it true? Okay, so we're all in the same life, and there's always something happening somewhere, whether we know it or not. It's like the old saying, the tree, did the tree fall in the forest even though you didn't hear it? Well, of course it is. There's things happening. So when we take sides, kind of like, is it true or is it false, or I don't believe that, or whatever. See, these are ideas that we cling to. Life is an isness. Now you know it's an isness. Now you pivot off of that. Now, I like psychics, seers, and clairvoyants, and whatever. These people are cool. Yes, they're very good at seeing what they see, and usually it's physical, astral. It's very personal. Okay, the personal side, once you start to figure out, is not that hard. And everybody's having experiences with this, just like the so-called clairvoyants or these people that charge you. But most people don't pay attention. That's just the difference. So you can go to funerals. That's one way to look at it. Okay, so here's a view. All right, you decide. Now that you know about the isness life is, because it's all alive, it's all life. There is no death. Okay, so you pass over from here, and all of a sudden you have this idea. So you want to go see yourself as dead. Okay, you want to have that experience. All right, that's choice by you to confirm that, oh, gee, I'm dead. But really, are you? You're not. So again, did she refer to your real awareness? No, she referred to the idea that, attending funerals, etc., and it confirms that you're dead. Well, just like the funeral that you went to and the light went out, and to you that was a wink, it's understandable. But you decided to attend the funeral. For myself, this is just for me, I don't go to weddings, I don't go to funerals, simply because I choose not to. I don't need that. I just bypass all of that, and it's just direct with the is. When my mother, as an example, and my father eventually passed over, I was just like the sun shining. I had no attitudes, no emotion or whatever, because I had the knowledge and the experience that she was passing over and going on her own journey. I didn't see her as dead. My brother called me up because they were living in a mobile home at the time, and he called me up and said, Mom had a heart attack. My younger brother, he's 18 years younger than me. And I said, okay. And he says, well, do you want to see her before, they take her away? I said, no, I've seen her my whole life. I said, I suggest you take her and get her cremated and just be done with it. And that was it. So again, we decide our experiences, don't we? And, you see it in the movies a lot of times when something happens. They make a big deal out of the funerals and the casket going in the ground. This is called the Christian burial. And can you imagine how many people are still in their caskets underground, wondering where they're at once they've passed over? They can still be in that box. Very real. Yeah. And it just depends upon the individual. Many people, what do they say? Well, when I'm 6 feet under, you can have my house and whatever. They're already deciding their destiny. So I see that position as more to where I would rather relate to the individual and show them that, hey, you don't have to go through this process or these ideas. They're all ideas. Funerals, who decided that? Do birds and animals have funerals? They don't do that. Look at what nature does. So and these are awarenesses just like humans, but humans have decided all this ritualism, and this ritualism actually holds you to the earth. All it takes is one idea, and you come back. And what usually happens at funerals? A lot of sorrow, a lot of grief. Somebody makes a speech, and there's the priest. Okay, of course, there's always the priest. And the priest stuff started off with sacrificial religion with the reptilians. This is where the priests come from, and they're supposed to conduct this. And what are they doing? They're almost sentencing the individual to more unconscious lifetime. So there's a lot more unseen with this stuff than is seen. So, each person decides. My mother passed away in about 1990. okay, at about age 64, because she was a heavy smoker and drinker, and then she started to work in the dry cleaning industry, and that whacked her really good. The chemicals are so bad. Within 2 months, she had a heart attack because the chemicals are so bad. My dad passed away around 2001, and he lived in Minnesota. That's where I was born, St. Paul, Minnesota. And so Dee, his second wife, who's a sweetie, had 4 kids, and she called me. She said, "Your dad passed away, and are you going to attend the funeral?" And I said, "No." I said, "I don't leave Huntington Beach." And she was rather upset about that. And I thought, okay, whatever. The thing is that I told her, I said, "I don't do funerals or weddings, and I just don't do that. I just let things be. People make the choice." And so that's just me. Everybody has their thing. And yes, you can say a little ceremony or what have you. But my mom was fine. I saw her on the real side. She passed over. She was fine. And actually, my brother had a girlfriend that he had acquired after a while. And this young gal was really cool. She was into health and stuff. And I talked to her sometimes. And she was having, her dad was having experiences with my mom on the real side, she was telling me. And so the mom that was here, her name was Mickey, she's on her own journey. So again, but it's choice. You decide that. So, realistically, now, there is no death. This is just a body. This is an overcoat. That's really what it is. I relate to people being to being. That's awareness to awareness, because then you're aware. When you start coding things with ideas and especially emotions and whatever, there's the confusion. People get confused, and when they go to the other side, even though they went through a funeral or whatever, doesn't mean that's going to resolve what they can understand. No, not at all. And so again, I don't see that as, that's like going to the graveyard all the time, putting flowers on a grave. That's a little bit silly, really. Again, do you see the birds doing that? These are rituals that people have invented. And originally, the Indians and, the other so-called spiritual paths and that, for the most part, the Buddhists, the monks, whatever, they burned the bodies. They knew that you got rid of the emotions and the karma and everything else. You actually helped the individual by doing that. But we have the so-called Christian burial where you prop up the body, you make it look like it's alive. The mortician does that. It's a business. And then everybody comes and sees it one last time, and then you say the ceremony about it. That actually creates more thought forms and emotions that actually hold the individual into a place of unawareness that most people don't see. And you could say all these cute, pretty words and whatever, but does that help the individual? Does that help release them? They are on the real side too, many times, standing there and involved in that whole ritual. And again, all these rituals have come from sacrificial religion, where people were sacrificed. So this is just another take on it that looks good. But it's a choice, isn't it? So there you go, young man.
Right, okay, well, I'm with you on that. I hate going to funerals. I think they're a blooming nuisance and nonsense. But I just feel sometimes that you need to go along to sort of show your sort of feelings of the people that passed over. But anyway, thanks for that. The next point I was going to ask you about was about music. Now, from reading over the years, I've found out that a lot of the great composers just themselves were aware of the fact that when they were composing all this fantastic music, they were actually channeling it, or they didn't necessarily use that word, but there's a lot of evidence that the music just seemed to come into their heads from somewhere they didn't really understand. They just sort of wrote it down, basically. And I'm wondering, well, first of all, if that's true, where it actually comes from, and is there some great place where all this music already exists, and like some vast musical bank account that these people just sort of draw on and sort of bring into the world, or is it the case that they themselves have lived in other worlds in past lives where this music was already written and sort of remembering it?
Well, those are good questions, young man. And yes, when you really take the time to learn, study, recognize the isness life is, you'll see that everything is available. And just like on the earth, we'll use that as an example. Almost anything can be available if it's created, and it's been created somewhere. So, when you look at the isness life is, it is invisible. All right. So we all of a sudden are in creation. So little by little, we'll just kind of take it like from the caveman days, etc. And, we come into a body after we've gone through all the other bodies from, vegetable, plant, animals, birds, fish, whatever. And eventually we get into a human body to where we have more capability with being creative. Okay, so again, each body that is taken on, we have the awareness. That's our real awareness. But the bodies only have so much function, can only do so much. So birds can only, for the most part, use their little feet for something, and basically they use their little beaks to pull the twigs out of the trees to, make their nest, creatively do that. That's what they are. Well, as so-called people or humans, we have more capability. We have more, you might say, awareness, and then we start to create our consciousness here. So yes, just like the buildings or institution or the monetary system where they make the money, it's like, well, gee, where does all this money come from? Well, somebody's making it, aren't they? So the same with the music. There have been those through history, and it can be you or someone else or whatever, because it's choice. Just like right now, you can choose to bring it through. It's not you. We call it channeling or whatever, etc. But it's really a choice that is available to your real awareness. All of life is available to your real awareness. You're just now recognizing that. See, you're coming through all this confusion of what you've decided before as obstacles, you see? So now you're sorting out the confusion, and yes, ideas, are a benefit when they're not created as restrictions. That becomes the difference. So yes, so through creation, through the, almost the infinity of creation, many people have created all these things. And just like the thought forms that exist, just like we're being bombarded with Wi-Fi and mind control because somebody decided it, it all exists, you might say, in the atmosphere here. And you pick it up simply because you make a choice, and all of a sudden, and, it's just like you go on the internet here and you go to YouTube, and all of a sudden all that stuff is there. You can have any kind of music you want. Almost all the world music for hundreds of years has been there. And so the same is through all of creation. It's all somewhere because it's been created. Or you tap into the real source, which is the is this life is, and you start to create it yourself. So everything's available to us. We are merely the experiencers, you see? So this is the cool part. Now you've come to that. Now you've come to that, the nowness life is, and that is that you decide what you want your life to be. So if you want to be, as an example, the adventure of being a greater musician than Beethoven, well then, go for it. I would say that Wagner would be that would be a real challenge because Wagner's in the real universes and he's awesome. So again, I would pick Beethoven or Mozart, but that's just a little pun on that, young man. So everything's available to you, yeah, just through your real awareness. Now you see.
So I'm very interested to hear what you say about Wagner, because I know I've read about it in your books that he's up there, and he's always been my favourite. I think he's absolutely fantastic, and been a great part of my life ever since I was a teenager. But yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you. Just one more from me before I end up hogging the whole thing. And it's a totally different subject, really. This is since I was, I suppose, a teenager. I've been fascinated by, well, all sorts of things, the so-called paranormal and so forth. But one area in particular I've always been interested in is cryptozoology. unidentified animals, in other words, that are not supposed to exist. And of course, over here we've got the advantage of one of the most famous ones in Scotland, which is the Loch Ness monster. And I've spent many hours sitting at Loch Ness with binoculars, trying to get a sighting. And then one day, Gwen and myself, I managed to rope into it when we got married. I'm about my 5th personal expedition. We had incredible fortune to see this great long neck and head come out of the water. And of course, we've been told ever since that we didn't see anything of the sort, it was rubbish and all the rest of it. All the experts who weren't actually there at the time, of course, who know all these things. But the question I'm actually getting to, rather long-windedly, I mean, I got watching the thing through 35 times the magnification glasses. I was totally convinced it was an animal. It really looked like an animal and it behaved like an animal. So I guess it probably was an animal. But it has been suggested that because of the legendary sort of elusiveness of these creatures, how infrequently they appear, that they're not there all the time. They in fact are some kind of a visitor from another realm and dimension or whatever. And I wonder if there's any truth in that. I mean, to me, it looked like an animal, and just a very obscure one, perhaps, but an animal nonetheless.
Well, again, anything is possible, and I've never researched. I've seen the Loch Ness monster idea in that one picture they have it above, etc., above the water where its head is out. And again, stories start, don't they? Somebody starts a story. It's like, oh, I saw something out there, and the easiest thing to relate to, again, like your real sight or dream experiences. Oh, I had a strange dream. Oh, it was weird. Okay, those are usually the first 2 words that come up, right? Because you don't understand it. So it's strange or weird. And so all of a sudden you're sitting there and this head pops out and you look at it. Well, gee, it's, it's not a flying fish. It's not a bird. It's not an elephant. It's, it's not a boa constrictor. It's none of those things that you've known, okay, that you can relate to, that you're seeing through your mind with, okay. And so we're in the era now where it's been around quite a long time, and there's a lot of stories, and I'm sure that there's kind of a tourist attraction to that, and they're selling T-shirts and whatever according to the legend. They want to keep the legend going because it really sounds good, but it's something like yourself in another body type, like the aliens or whatever, or it's alien or it's a fish, or doesn't matter what it is, or it's a big old dinosaur that's been there millions of years. It's just another body type is really what it is. So, again, when you're in this body, there's confusion is created. It's not that there's confusion, but confusion is created, and as people keep accepting these ideas, then they become confused. You see? So again, it's the world today, just like the politics of today. Everybody's confused about it because they keep agreeing to it in some way, trying to sort it out, which you can't. It's a lot of created nonsense purposely. And so again, this legend of the Loch Ness monster, for the most part, because you know about it, you're going to kind of pivot off those ideas, aren't you? Instead of really seeing it for what it is. So just like this, and recognizing this, not everybody's going to see it. Very few people will. And to them, it's real. To the rest of the world, what we're presenting, it's so simple. You see how it makes sense. But you know what? The world does not want to make sense. They really don't. They want to chase phenomena. They want to chase funny ideas that they pretend are workable, which really aren't. And this is why the world is like it is today, because people just won't stop and make sense of something. So that experience was yours. You decide. And just like me with the is. I don't try and convince anybody. I'm not concerned. The thing is, like the sun shining, the sun is not concerned. It's an isness. I'm just grateful that I'm aware of this. That's my position, is gratitude for what I am aware of, and never for one moment do I take it for granted. Not at all, thinking that I know something. So you, young man, are the experiencer of that. You decide, but that's something in creation, and you decide if you choose to how it relates to your real awareness, and it's really that important. Kind of like a circus you went to when you were young. It was fun, but what's the big deal? Etc. So, yeah, and it's not about truth. Everything is as it is, and if you want to explore further, get on a diving suit and go down there and see if you can meet it for the fun of it. I would. That's how I met Ursula, the mermaid, and the other mermaids, etc. I decided the adventure. You see, you can do anything.